Welcome to the Inspire Speakers Showcase. We are coming to you live from AV1's Control Room studio in Sydney, and we have got a fabulous morning ahead of us with 4 amazing speakers. My name is Shelly Horton and I am delighted to be your host. I've been a journalist and TV presenter for 25 years. You might recognise me from my weekly spots on Channel 9 and 9 Honey. One of my favourite things to do is MC in front of a large crowd, but I've had to use the dreaded P word and pivot to presenting to a virtual crowd like you guys today. I can't see you, but I can feel the love. Now, we have all been greatly affected by COVID-19 and we have all had to pivot. And in particular, anyone who's involved in bringing people together. We know a lot of you watching work in areas like planning events or conferences, providing training and development, or simply leading teams and people. And we've rarely experienced a test like this before. And now, more than ever, we need to be connected. So that's why a couple of weeks ago, Keith Harwood from Inspire Speakers decided that he wanted to bring you a memorable morning of energy and inspiration, as well as the latest content and lessons from 4 of his outstanding speakers. So, who did Keith call to make this happen? Well, he called another Keith, Keith Wooten from AV1. And when 2 guys named Keith get together, well, you know the results are going to be worth turning in for. So, here we are, excited to open the virtual doors of AV1's Control Room to the industry and to show how these types of events can be done in style. This is a highly controlled studio space run by the awesome team at AV1. You can host a virtual event, a conference, a board meeting, a team building exercise, or even host an awards night. And it can be shared with anyone throughout Australia or the world for that matter. In the studio today, with social distancing measures in place, of course, we have Craig Foster talking about people power and Julie Masters discussing the new age of influence. Then from his home in Noosa, Aaron Williams will share his expertise on mental fitness in a work from home world. And we are so excited to have Kristen Hadeed joining us all the way from America, and she's just finished running a class for Simon Sinek. So it is going to be a jam-packed morning. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, you will be able to do this by typing it into the chat box, and I'll try to share some of your questions at the end of each presentation. We are going to give you a lot of energy and inspiration, so sit back and relax. Trust me, it's going to be worth ignoring your emails for the next 90 minutes. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Our first speaker is Julie Masters. Julie spent her career decoding influence. She is the founder and CEO of Influence Nation. She works with businesses and leaders and organisations on amplifying their influence so that they can become most trusted and the most authoritative in their space. Julie's clients include industry-leading CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, global influencers, and media personalities. Across thousands of stages and platforms, her clients have reached millions of people around the globe. She's now going to talk to us about the new age of influence. So, please welcome Julie Masters.
I want to start today by asking a question. And the question is this: If you look at the who, what, and where of what influences you, your decisions, your ideas, your actions, how much has it changed over the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years? And in fact, actually, let's accelerate that for a second. How much has it changed just over the past 5 to 6 weeks? How much has the situation that we find ourselves in right now impacted our behavior as organizations, as leaders? You know, the rules of influence, they have changed. They have changed significantly. And if you look at what gets our attention now, what and where captures our attention, if you look at what engages us, if you look at the people and the organizations we decide to trust and follow, and more importantly, the ones that compel us enough to take action, the rules there have shifted. And they have shifted year on year, and now it's shifting month on month, and now it seems to be shifting week on week. I mean, the government's communicating with us via an app now, for goodness sake. And all of that leads me to one question, and it is this one. What makes an influencer? What makes an influencer? I mean, amongst all this noise, uncertainty, complexity, what makes an organization or a leader stand apart or stand out as a trusted authority? What creates that situation? And if we know what creates that situation, can we look at those behaviors, those traits, and learn from them consistently? Now, I have spent most of my career in the world of influence. You know, influence is the world in which I have concentrated all of my efforts, trying to answer this one question. It's the world where I live. It's the world where we explore. And what we are exploring is, you know, what ideas, what conversations, what type of behaviors propel organizations, propel movements, propel conversations. So I guess you could say I've spent most of my career actually studying this one question or obsessing about this one question. And I'd like to think I've got kind of good at answering it. But before I do today, I think it's important that we look at how influence has changed and why it has changed. Now, the largest driver of how and why influence has changed, I'm sure you can guess, is the digital world, right? The digital world, the existence and the expansion and the explosion of the digital world has created what I would like to call a new age of influence. And it has done that by pulling the 3 main levers of influence. Now, the first of those levers is access. We all have access now. You want your own TV show, get a YouTube channel. It'll take you 2 minutes or less. You want your own newspaper, get a blog. It'll take you 5 minutes or less. You want your own radio station, start a podcast. It'll take you half an hour or less. We all have access to all of the channels now. And in fact, just over the past few weeks since the lockdown began, we have seen a quantum leap in access. People who had never engaged on different platforms before suddenly jumping on. Grandparents creating TikTok videos for their grandchildren. Companies trying to engage their communities and their target audiences across a variety of different platforms in a variety of different ways. People figuring out online banking. People figuring out online shopping. Suddenly, we all have access. We all have a voice on every single platform. Now, that's fantastic, but that creates an awful lot of noise as well. Now, the second lever of influence is attention. And what the new age influence has done is something really, really interesting. It has split attention into 2 pockets. The first pocket has contracted. Our attention spans have contracted. So now we have attention span, I think it's 8 seconds. Last time I looked, less than a goldfish, I know that. But what's interesting about that is that's just the first part of our attention. If you want to capture my attention, you'd better get me fast. You better come in, be compelling quickly. And you look at how that's impacted advertising. You look at how that's impacted trailers. We call it the Netflix effect. Trailers now are short, punchy, get my attention. You look at the best speeches of all time from the most compelling leaders of all time. They kick off fast and they kick off in a compelling way. So that's the first part of our attention, but it's also created this other part of our attention, shift in our attention. And that one has expanded. If you get me quickly, if you get me in quickly as a leader, as an organization, as an advertising campaign, I will give you unlimited amounts of my attention after that. I will give you unlimited amounts of my time. And for anybody over the past few weeks who's a little bit like me and may or may not have binge watched a lot of Netflix shows in the evenings, you will attest to that fact. Get me in, I will give you unlimited times of my attention. In fact, Google and YouTube have put an entire team together called Unskippable Labs to figure out exactly that. What needs to happen in the early stages of attention and what needs to happen in the later stages. Now, the third lever that the new age of influence has pulled is that of speed. Back before, if you wanted to reach people, you had to do it in a progression of slow ways. Fax machine, letter, and then we moved on to email. Even email is seen as slow now that we have alerts, notifications, instant message. Not only has it changed the speed with which we're able to influence and engage, it's also changed the speed at which we can disseminate messages. Now, in this new age of influence, you are able to go from being a nobody to a somebody in under 24 hours in 180 characters or less. Now, you better be good when you get there. You better have a product worth buying or an idea or a vision worth buying into. But that trajectory has never existed before in the history of mankind. That's speed. So, those are the three levers of influence that have been pulled to create this new age of influence. But what does it look like? What does it look like when we take those levers and we actually just drill them down into behaviors, drill them down into kind of core traits? It looks a little bit like this. It looks like two distinct camps, two distinct worlds, then and now. Now, those leaders and organizations that are living in the then column, they have a distinct way of behaving, a distinct way of communicating, a distinct way of leading and attracting new business versus those in the now column. So let's go through this. Let's go through this very quickly. The first line there, out-interrupt versus out-contribute. Now this is the when of influence. This is the when. The previous model of influence, the old age of influence, was I'm just going to out-interrupt. I'm just going to continue interrupting you until you buy from me, or until you listen to me, or until you do what I want you to do. The new age of influence is an out-contribute model. And an out-contribute model means I will out-contribute everybody else in my space. I will understand and know and learn all of your questions, and I will answer them in a compelling way. And I will attract you to me, and then leave it up to you to use your networks to pull other people to me. Out-contribution. The second one there is official versus personal. And this is the how, and we've seen this just recently with a lot of world leaders. It's been fascinating to watch. An official announcement, an official piece of communication is in the then column. What we want now, in a world of transparency, in a world of access, is we want access to the person. We want access to the leader behind the message. We want a more personal message. We want lectern out of the way. We want sat down. We want speaking directly to me. We want Facebook Lives. We want to be able to answer questions or ask questions. So the how, from official to personal. Then we have all about us versus all about you. This one's very simple. This is the what. What information do you include? Old age of influence, what we used to include was information that's all about us, all about me. Let me tell you all about me, all the things that I want you to know about me, or about what I am trying to do. Now it's all about you. It's all about you. What do you need to know? What do you want to know? What's relevant to your exact situation right now? And what language do you use? And I will become fluent in that language. The next one is brand-driven versus human-driven. Now, this one is fascinating. This is one of the largest shifts in influence that we are seeing. 96% of everything that you consume online, everything you scrolled through this morning, everything that caught your attention, the people that you follow, all those messages came from human beings. 96% of them, came from human beings rather than brands. 96% of everything that we consume, everything that influences our decisions, our actions, our purchases, comes from human beings and not from brands. Now, why is that important? A message that comes from a human gets 10 times greater engagement than a message that comes from a brand. Now, we can use that within leadership. Do our messages come from the actual leaders? Do they use their voice? Does it come from them personally? When we send out marketing emails, do we send it out from head of innovation, head of HR, head of sales, or do we send it out just from the company? So that's a lever that we can pull really easily. Collection versus action is the next one. We've gone from a model where if I can just collect enough contacts, collect enough people, if I can shout at enough people, then I will get what I want, to this, to action-focused. If I can get the right people to listen, and I can translate what is important to them, and I can lay out a path for action, and over the past few weeks, from a crisis communication standpoint, even if we don't have a path for action, because we don't know what's coming next, if I can present a framework for action. This is how we are making our decisions when it is the time to make them. Then we create engagement. This one-size-fits-all, talking to as many people as possible, no longer is the most influential path. Product focused versus journey focused. Now, product focused, that is when I tell you all about the things that I want to sell you, and I use the same kind of generic message all the way through. Journey focused is the understanding that everybody that you talk to is at a particular point in their journey, be it their buying journey, be it their career, be it their journey as a parent, as a golfer, you name it. We ask different questions at different stages of our journey. And you need to know where I am at and answer my specific questions. So that's the difference. On the one hand, we're just talking about our products. This is me, this is what I have to sell you, let me tell you all about it. On the other hand, we're curious. On the other hand, we become a student of the world, of the people we're trying to reach, and we figure out where they're at and we speak to that. Finally, information-based versus story-based. Information-based versus story-based. We are hardwired for story. We're hardwired for story. Story is how we create empathy. Story is how we create emotion. And emotion, as we know, is the fastest path to action. What happens when we're nervous, and especially in a crisis when we don't know what to say, or we don't know what messages to put out there, we tend to hide behind technical language. We tend to hide behind our information. And we do it a lot as leaders. The most engaging path is story. Stories are what we remember. Stories are what we retell. Now, companies that have just been absolutely nailing this recently, this now column, they are Apple. Apple's been doing an amazing job of storytelling. You look at Airbnb providing the out-contribute model, providing, I think it was 10,000 homes, or 100,000 homes, in fact, for frontline workers. You look at the world leaders that have been excelling. What I want you to do is in your next meeting or your next strategy session, what I want you to do is I want you to pay close attention. I want you to maybe pick someone that you think is excelling or a company you think is excelling in this now column and ask your team or ask yourself, what would they do right now? What would they do with this piece of communication? What would they do with this campaign? Or alternatively, what should I do if you can't think of a good enough example? I'm going to drill down on just one of those with you right now. I'm going to drill down on contribution. In the future, we will buy from those who out-contribute and not those who out-interrupt. And I think that intuitively we all know that that is true. I mean, I don't know, how many of you love being interrupted? Anyone love being interrupted? I just love it. I love it. You know, like Friday night when you're sat on your sofa and you're just thinking, I just really need some more life insurance. I'm going to sit here until someone calls. You know that feeling? No? Just me. Okay. So we buy from people who out-contribute, not people who out-interrupt us. Those are the people that we engage with. Those are the people that we are led by. Now, the best form of contribution is to become what somebody is interested in. So not interrupting what they're interested in, but becoming what they are interested in. And the best way to do that I know of, is to become the primary translator of their world. If you just do one thing from this presentation, I want you to think about how you can become the primary translator of the world of your target market. And a primary translator does this. A primary translator goes out to the fringes, to worlds where I do not have the time, the experience, or the bandwidth to go, to the horizon that I might not know about, and brings back important information for me, using my language in easy-to-digest bites. That is a translator. You look at the old age of influence, we bought from, we connected with, we trusted, we followed the technicians, the people with the most information, because we didn't have access to it. And as I've said, you know, that access lever has completely shifted now. Now we all have access to information. I don't think anyone sat there at the moment feeling that they have a lack of information. People we buy from now, they are the ones that are able to translate that information for us. Now, if you want to become a translator, the best way that I know to do that is to keep what I would call a relentless question radar. Your target market, the people that you are trying to reach, they have questions. We think in questions, we search in questions. According to Gartner, actually by the end of 2020, 30% of all search will be via question. If you think about voice-related search, think about your Google Home, you think about your Alexa, how do you search then? You search via questions. So if you understand the questions of your target market, you are 9/10 of the way to being the most influential voice in their head. Now, our questions tend to fall into 4 buckets. What are the challenges that I'm going to face on this road, on this journey, on what we're facing, and what I'm facing? What are the challenges I'm going to face? What are the opportunities that I might have? What are the opportunities I might have that I don't know that I have? That's when you become a real trusted advisor or a real trusted authority. It's when you're 3 steps ahead of me and you're able to map this out for me. What questions might I have about the process that I'm about to go on? And what questions might I have about trends that are going to be impacting me? In order to do this, you need to become a student of the world of the people you are trying to reach. A student of the world of your consumer, a student of the world of your team. Every target market, and your team is a target market right now, every target market has what I would call charismatic language. It's language that they use, it's questions that they ask when they're by themselves talking to their peers. And it is your job as an influencer to become fluent in that language. So what I want you to do, here's something you can do right now. And I have it on my phone. I have, in the notes section of your phone, I have a little note called questions. And every time I get asked a question, I write it down. I write it down. It becomes the basis of content. It becomes the basis of training manuals. It becomes the basis of sales scripts. It becomes the basis of my thinking, of the way that I communicate. So keep a relentless question radar. And what I want you to do, if you can do that, the next level, start sharing it with your team. Collect it together. Once a month, share it. Answer those questions. Compare answers. Oh, I have got this amazing answer to this question. Let me share it with you. So keep a relentless question radar, because the future will belong to those who become fluent and own the questions of their target market. And I'm just going to leave you with this one. And I think that this one is probably one of the most important facets that we will have coming in the next kind of few months and maybe even years. There is a myth out there, and I call it the confidence myth. And this confidence myth is responsible for keeping some of the best organizations, the brightest leaders, the most interesting ideas on the sidelines. And it is this myth that I will do X, stand up, speak out, try something new, raise my hand, say no, use my voice when I feel more confident. And we all have versions of that sentence. And I just want to tell you how much that is not true. In my experiences in 20 years, I have never found that to be true. Confidence shows up when we show up over and over and over again. Confidence is the result. It is not the ingredients. I have a young daughter, she's 4. And I take her to the park, obviously not recently, but take her to the park and she's trying to figure out the monkey bars right now. And so she's jumping up, falling down, jumping up, falling down. And I look at her and I'm like, honey, you all right? You feeling a little bit more confident now? And she goes, no, and just keeps going. Because she understands that confidence is a result of showing up. And something happens when we get older or we rise through the ranks in seniority. We start to believe that confidence comes first, and it doesn't. It comes last. So if we're not waiting on confidence, what can we do? This is what I want you to do. I want you to focus instead on certainty. I want you to focus instead of communicating with certainty, acting with certainty. And again, this is something we are going to need in spades. People who are able to communicate and act with certainty, map out the path for us, translate it for us, lend us some of their certainty going forwards. And this is what certainty looks like. Certainty looks like this. Today, I give you the best that I have. Where all of my experiences, all of my mistakes, all of my collaborations, all of my peers, all of my ideas, where everything has led me. Today I give you the best that I have. And tomorrow, if I get new information, I will change my mind. I will pivot, to use a word that's used a lot at the moment. But right now, today, I give you the best that I've got. That is certainty. Certainty is a downward sensation. Confidence is an upward sensation. It's adrenaline. It's not helpful. I want certainty. I don't want confidence for you. I don't want confidence for your teams. I don't want confidence for the leaders. And if you look at The slide that I have currently, I don't want confidence for any little girl or boy sat outside of Parliament trying to drive a conversation or a movement when they feel too small or too inexperienced or too insignificant to do so. What I want for them is certainty. I want gravity. I want the ability to be able to attract the people they need, the opportunities they want, and the resources that it's going to require. So please take that. Now is not a time for confidence. Now is a time for certainty. So those are the things that I want you to focus on, because one thing I can promise you is that influence doesn't live out there. This new age of influence doesn't live out there really. Not in the algorithms, not in social media, not in all the words. Those are just ways that you amplify the stories that you already have. Influence starts in here, it starts in you, it starts in your teams, and it's an inside job.
Oh, Julie, thank you so much for that. That was so inspiring. And I promise I'm no longer going to post photos of avocado toast. I'm going to make sure I'm answering
If you
questions.
do, I will like them for you. How's that?
Okay, we've got some questions. Are you ready for them?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we have Megan who's written in, and she has said, is there a rule of thumb in terms of ratio of your content on social media that should be video versus written?
That is such a good question. All of the studies right now, all of the anecdotal evidence that's coming out of YouTube, that's coming out of Google, is just video, 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 video. And if you can nail video, then live video. So every single algorithm is pointing towards video right now. If you're not good at it or you're not used to it, start out with pre-recorded. I met a guy recently who did 100 videos in 100 days. And he literally did the first lot in his shorts, in his kitchen, and he didn't even post them. He just set the discipline that he was going to do it. You could do that organizationally. It was his monkey buzz, right?
Right.
So get good, but don't get perfect. And this is a massive one. Do not get hung up on perfect. Right now, especially now, what we're looking at is global permissiveness to focus on passion and process. And if you look at what's been put together here today by the two Keiths, it's a focus on process and passion. It is not a focus on perfect. It's a focus on showing up. So do not let perfection get in your way. It's always version 8, so just get through versions 1 to 7 as quickly as you can.
Okay, we've got another question. This one's from Sam saying, how do you build trust when you don't actually have the answers?
Another good question. How do you build trust when you don't have the answers? The truth is that none of us have the answers right now. And the biggest thing that you can do to build trust in that situation is to say, I don't have the answers. To say, that's a really good question. I'm going to find out. I have a team of really smart people behind me. I'm going to go. I'm going to find out. I'm going to be back to you within 48 hours.
What? Honesty?
Honesty.
What?
Do you know what? That builds more trust and more engagement than bluffing it. Or alternatively, just saying, look, I'm not sure, I'll find out. If you make a clean commitment and then get back with a decent answer, those are the people we trust. Those are the people that become our trusted advisors.
And our final question is from Janine, and she wants to know the best way to influence people when you aren't physically in the room. I know a lot of salespeople are worried about this right now.
Yeah, it's difficult. We rely so much on tonality, on body when we're influencing, especially when it comes to storytelling and one-on-one negotiation, conflict resolution. What I would say, there's a whole structure that you can work on in terms of how to be heard when you can't be seen, how to influence when you can't be there. But the biggest thing I would focus on is intent. What is your intention? Just spend 2 minutes before going in, focusing hard on that. And intention looks like this. What do I want people to feel, do, believe differently as a result of this conversation or piece of communication than they did before? You can get super clear on that and combine it with a good structure, with a good map for the conversation, then you're going to be 9/10 ahead of most conversations that happen.
Thank you so much. I am absolutely loving this. Socially distant
I
and
know.
yet so connected.
Oh, so close right now.
Thank you so much, Julie. We are now going to speak to Aaron Williams. He is the CEO and co-founder of MindStar, a mental health organisation. And you know what? The government has recently been focusing heavily on the country's mental health programs during these extremely difficult times. And what they've done is they've called Aaron because they want to know what we can do to improve people's mental health and well-being. And Aaron's mission is to crush the stigma associated with seeking support for mental health. So he wants to give the people the knowledge, inspiration, tools, and improve and maintain their well-being. So maybe the lag was the fact that we had to go to Queensland, which is about 30 years behind. I'm allowed to say that because I'm a Queenslander. Please welcome Aaron Williams.
G'day everyone. Thank you, Shelly. I think that little delay just shows that Shelly is definitely the MC of the year. I think she's up for the award. Thank you everyone for your patience. My name is Aaron Williams. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mindstar. And Mindstar's about workplace wellbeing. It's about making it super, super easy for your people to connect with the very best wellbeing and mental health information, education, training, online programs. We have a network of mental health coaches across the country and mental health professionals. And so we work with everyone from the big banks to Woolworths to building companies to ballet companies, helping them help their people to be their very best every day. So what I'd like to do for the next 20 minutes or so is keep it really, really simple. So I want to do three things. I want to talk about, firstly, why this subject, wellbeing and mental health, is so important. I want to talk about how your brain works, and especially in a time like this of COVID-19. And I want to talk about what you can do to maintain your own well-being. And that's not just for yourself. That's also for you, but also for your colleagues, for your friends, for your family, for your kids, and for the people that you love the most. So I just want to very quickly talk about a little bit about my background. I tell this story because it's really the heart and soul of what we do. So I'm a mental health professional. I'm an accredited mental health social worker. I've spent most of my career working in major hospitals, in emergency departments, doing suicide risk assessments on people who've tried to kill themselves the night before. So really at the pointy end. But I actually have a corporate background. I worked in IT, account management, back in the wild 90s. And how I got into this space was that back in 2003, my now wife and I spent 5-6 months traveling across South America. And we're backpacking. We had this incredible trip, did crazy things like we climbed volcanoes and built a raft and floated down the tributaries of the Amazon. We volunteered in an animal refuge for about 3 months in the Bolivian jungle. And we had this incredible trip. Then we ran out of cash. So we ran out of money and had to go back to the real world and go back to work. And so we went from this fantastic, sunny, free journey through South America and went and moved to London. So we landed in London right before Christmas in a brutal London winter. I don't think we saw the sun for about 30 days. All the terrorist stuff had just started. And the front page of the newspapers were saying things like, it's not if, it's when. I couldn't get a job because it was right before Christmas. And the only job that I could get was working for Westminster City Council in a call centre in the complaints department, getting abused by English people for 8 hours a day. And so I'd get up every morning and wake up in the dark and get dressed and go out and push through the sleet to the local tube station, jam myself onto this tube with about another 1,000 people all dressed in black, of course, go into the city, get off, push through the sleet to Council House, go upstairs, sit in a little cubicle, get abused for 8 hours, and then push back through the sleet home to my mildewy dark little flat and press repeat, day after day after day. And I started to struggle. And what happened then was I was living over there with my younger brother, who was playing professional footy over there, and his best mate, his name was Nick Duncombe. He was basically living with us. Nicky D was 21 years of age. He was the cheekiest little commie bloke I've ever met. He just debuted for England. He just ran on to Twickenham inside Johnny Wilkinson, debuted for England, rugby, his whole life ahead of him. they decided they wanted to get some sunshine. I drove them to the airport. They caught a plane to the Canary Islands. They got off, and Nick got meningococcal and died within hours in front of my brother's eyes. And I did the big brother thing, and I flew over and brought Nick back, and I got my brother through the funeral, and then I crashed and burned. And I'd never experienced anything like that before. I was depressed. I was very angry. I was suicidal. And my family flew in, my mum flew in, and she said, "We're taking you home." And they brought me back to Australia, and it took me about 6 months to come through that. And when I did, I asked myself some questions, and I was like, what the hell was that? You know, why did I know about that? Why is it so hard for Australian men to reach out? Why aren't we screaming this stuff from rooftops in workplaces and schools and universities and community centres and sporting clubs? And surely we can do better. So since then, my mission, and I'd hope that really everyone's mission who's on this webinar, is that we need to stop pulling the bodies out of the river. We need to get upstream, and we need to get to the top of the cliff, and we need to engage with and talk to and inspire people well before they want to jump off. And that's why this is so important, and what Keith has done to pull together this webinar is so important, so we can learn about this, and so that every single one of us can have these conversations in a time of great crisis for our country and for the planet, to be honest, when uncertainty and anxiety are going through the roof. So I just want to talk, and this is obviously something that in a webinar, you know, I'll talk about over an hour or 2 hours. So we're trying to jam this into 20 minutes, but I just want to touch on and plant some seeds around this subject, and to talk about, you know, mental fitness in a work from home world. Has two parts. The first is about positive planning, and that's to navigate our new reality, because that's what it is. We're actually living in a new reality, and we're not sure what that's going to look like coming out the other side. The second is that we want to actually talk about mental fitness and self-care, and it's you know, how do we be just as healthy, happy, and productive in this world? So what I want to do is really talk about positive planning, and in that we'll talk about the 3 stages of COVID. And this is what I work with organisations, to giving them a narrative to navigate this time of change. And there are 3 stages. The first is initial shock and denial. And the big things when this happens, we needed all the practical tools. People needed infrastructure to work from home, all the platforms, the uncertainty that comes with tech platforms, as you may have noticed. And you know, the second part is riding the wave, and it's how do we best support our people during the roller coaster ride, and how do we best support ourselves, because this is never changing kind of landscape. So as we're flattening the curve, how do we ride that wave of uncertainty and make sure that we're all doing okay? Because we need to be okay for that third part, which is the recovery. We will get through this. This will pass. And we need to be ready for that recovery so that we're re-energized and we can then re-inspire our people to thrive. Because we want to come out the other side of this when all of the restrictions and businesses pick back up and be ready to hit the ground running. So it's important to take our people on this journey of these 3 stages. And so they're primed, so when things do switch back on, that they're ready to go and they're all knackered. So what I want to do is talk about the wellbeing and mental health challenges that we know people are experiencing. And so we know this is a physical illness, but people are experiencing mental health challenges such as stress, anxiety, fear, and panic. There's a whole bunch of financial distress for people in organisations. There's we know from SARS and other past epidemics that the social isolation really knocks people around. So, and I hate the word social isolation. We shouldn't be calling it social isolation. It's not social isolation, it's physical distancing. We need to be able to separate and not be in each other's pockets. We need to have that 1.5-2 meter radius, but we still have to be socially connected. It's never been more important that we're socially connected. And what we do is we use technology to do that. We know that a lot of different individuals are experiencing COVID-19 very, very differently. So it's really down to demographics, really. So someone who's, you know, a parent and has kids at home and who are homeschooling, they're all overwhelmed. We're all losing our minds. You know, I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old in the lounge room, and we're doing our very best to get through and work and school. So parents are really struggling and need some help with that and with their own well-being. Single people are bored, have a whole bunch of time on their hands and are sort of being cut off from a lot of their social groups. Older people feel like it's actually a threat to their life, and they're also being excluded from their grandkids. And people with anxiety have a history of anxiety. Their anxiety is many of them is going through the roof. So we need to help all those different groups and then understand that different groups will experience it in different ways. So really, what's the key? Connection. And so really what we need to do is focus on how do we provide really easy to use, practical, reliable online and digital communication and tools so people still feel like they're connected to the mothership and they're connected to each other. So I hope that makes sense, but it's really just touching on that. So what that takes is some planning. And I'm only going to touch on this and sort of highlight it on this webinar, but for the elements of positive planning are pretty simple. So get positive. People go into this with a bit of a negative mindset, but I've got, it's turning people around and going, this is positive. You can take positive things from a work at home world. And we have, I've got these senior executives who are saying that they're not enjoying being at home, but guess what they get to do? They get to have lunch with their kids. So you've got CEOs who I'm saying to them, it's how often in your life are you going to be at home? You're going to align your lunch hour with your kids' lunch hour and sit down and have lunch with them. And they love it, the kids and the dad or the mum. You also have that, you need to do some healthy planning. It's around rituals. You need to get up in the morning, have a shower, get dressed like you're starting work. You don't have to wear your work clothes, but you have to wear working clothes. And at the end of the day, get out of them, have a shower, and get into your home clothes. You need the rituals of the day. You need to integrate well-being into your day. So you need to top and tail your day. Take regular breaks, which none of us are doing. We're just doing back-to-back video calls, telephone calls, and we're getting to the point where many of us are getting burnt out. So get outside, get some fresh air, get physical. It's reminding people it's about all those simple things that will keep us well through this very trying, challenging period. And the last is get creative. Get creative, stay connected. Do a Google Hangouts once a day at 10 a.m. for your whole team and have a coffee together. Don't talk work, talk social stuff. Talk about how you're going. That's what people are missing. I did a call yesterday with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet for the department. Do you know what they're missing? Each other. They're missing their workmates so much. All of us are. We're missing that human interaction. So using technology, you have to connect twice as much. So that's really just a very quick snapshot of positive planning. And I just wanted to also talk about leadership. Some of the key traits of leadership that we know about. And all the data talks about it in contemporary leadership research. There are three key things, and especially at time of crisis like this, we need strong leadership over the next 6 months to 12 months. We need strong corporate leadership, and I'll just say quietly, I think at the moment that's been lacking a little bit. We need people to step up, and how you do it is for your own leaders to do it within the organisation, but also self-leadership. We're all leaders in our own way. We're all leaders of our group, our colleagues, our family, our community. So it's leadership and self-leadership. And the three key traits to that are first, authenticity. The leaders who are doing so well through this are the ones that are being themselves, and people can sense that and know that. So it's giving people permission to be authentic and not have to pretend to be someone else. It's vulnerability. I haven't talked to anyone yet who's saying they're doing really well at the moment. So it's being vulnerable. It's not airing your dirty laundry, but it's an ability to actually say, yeah, I'm struggling homeschooling as well as being CEO. And the third is empathy. So if we expect 110% from ourselves, we're being unrealistic and too hard on ourselves. So it's being empathetic to ourselves, but it's also being empathetic to the people that work with us and for us, and also for our kids. We're all going through a time of change. So really, if there is a 10%, 20% drop in productivity, that's probably to be expected. We want to be held to the same accountabilities, but some empathy with people as they go through this time of change. So the part that I really want to talk about a little bit more depth is around mental fitness and self-care. And as I said, there's never been a more important time. And there's a question that I ask every single workshop, every single group, every single keynote that I do. And it's a very simple question about what words first come to mind when we talk about mental health. 99 out of 100 times, the first thing people say is things like depression, anxiety, substance use, hospitals, suicide, a whole range of things they talk about. But that's not mental health. That's mental illness. So mental health is about being mentally healthy. It's about being your best. It's about being resilient. It's people with good mental health wake up in the morning, kiss their partner good morning, hug their kids, pat the dog, go off to work hard for 8 hours, and then come home, hang out with their friends, have a beer, whatever it is. That's being mentally healthy. So, being able to contribute to community. That's what mental health is. It's about mental fitness. So the key thing here, and I've been talking about how hard it's been for the last 12, 18 months, but now it's even at a new level. Let's talk about 2020. Let's talk about some of the challenges. And the challenges are that, we live in an increasingly stressful, busy, fast-paced world that's sometimes overwhelming. Some of the technology that's built to make our life easier seems to be making it harder. We've never been so connected, but sometimes we've never felt so lonely. So you throw in a long-standing drought, you then throw in national bushfires, and then whack in a pandemic on top of that, and people are going to be struggling a little bit. So what do we do? How do we actually, how do we stress less, and how do we maintain our mental fitness? And there's one really very, very simple way to do this. It's a question that we've got to ask ourselves. So the question is, how do we stress less and maintain our mental fitness? And the answer is very simple as well. The answer is understanding how our brains work. Because our brains, while they're part of the solution, are actually a major part of the problem. Because my brain, your brain, every single person on this webinar's brain, every single person on this planet's brain is doing the same thing. Our brains all tell us stories. And nonstop, they are talking to us nonstop. Blah, 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 blah. So our brains are constantly talking to us. So even while I'm sitting here talking to you and telling you, your brain's telling you stories, your brain's saying to you, how long is this bloke going to talk for? I wish I made myself a coffee before I sat down. When's Craig Foster coming on? It's da 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 da, just absolutely blabbing away at you the whole time. The problem is our brains don't always tell us good stories. They often tell us negative stories. And I'll give you an example of how your brain might tell you stories. Think about when you're doing public speaking in front of a crowd, and you're walking up, your legs start trembling. Your brain's not saying to you, wow, you're going to smash this. You're going to be amazing. They're going to think you're incredible. What's your brain telling you? What's your brain screaming at you? Shit. Why did I agree to do this? I don't remember anything. I'm going to go blank. This could be the worst idea ever. It's just screaming at you the whole time. And that's what our brains do. They tell us stories nonstop. And they all tell us the same stories. So they're things like the stories that our brains, our kids' brains, everyone's brains tell us is, I'm not good enough. I'm going to fail. I'm too fat. Or I'm too thin. I'm ugly. I need to worry about the future. What if there's a restructure? What if I lose my job? What if my husband loses his job? What if my wife loses her job? Who'll pay the mortgage? Who's going to pay the kids' school fees? When will they realize that I don't actually know what I'm doing? That someone's going to realize I don't know what I'm doing and they're going to see straight through me. Blah, 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 blah. It's a constant chitter-chatter of brain chatter. So the good news is that just like we train our heart and our lungs and our muscles, we also can train our brains. So what you do, because the reality is life's a roller coaster. Has its ups and downs, ups and downs. And what we need to do is train our brain so that we go through those dips on the roller coaster, and many of us are going through a dip right now. When we go through those dips, we come out the other side, and we can deal with our normal stress before it gets to psychological distress or mental illness. So just touching on very high level concepts here, but it's actually what can we give our people to actually help them in those dips. So two important points. The first is you can train and strengthen your brain just like your physical health, okay? And the second is, the important thing is, this is not just about mental health or mental illness. What we're talking here, we're talking about, and it's a word that I invented myself. I'm very proud of it. We're talking about life shit. This is all this is about, life shit. It's about your day-to-day life shit that you got to deal with. It's about work stress, financial stress, relationship stress. It's about COVID-19. It's about homeschooling. It's about, how annoying your husband is. It's about, the cost of housing, the real estate bubble. It's about all these things that we deal with day to day. So we have to help people to deal with their life shit, and that's what early intervention and prevention is all about. So I just want to ask a question. The question we need to ask every single one of ourselves is, what's the easiest way to look after my well-being? And there's I should talk about 3 simple steps to well-being right now in this webinar. The first is work-life integration. Second is how to stress less. And the third is bringing back the joy. So let's go to the first one, work-life integration. So work-life integration is, remember work-life balance? Nah, it doesn't exist anymore, over. So now we actually have to ask ourselves 2 questions around work-life integration. First is, how are you showing up in work? And how are you showing up in life at home? How are you showing up in work? And how are you showing up in life at home? Because in a perfect world, the 2 of them should never overlap. Never overlap. They should be totally separate, which is hard when you're working in your spare bedroom and then walking into the lounge room for dinner. So it's even more important that we separate this out. How are you showing up in work? Your work and your stress shouldn't affect how you're turning up to spend time with your family. So how do you do that? The key strategy is something called buffer time. So buffer time is when you have a buffer between work and home. So when it's in the same building, what we need to do is put something in there. So for example, what my wife does, my wife puts in buffer time she finishes work. We might have had a stressful day. She's my co-founder. We work together. Terribly stressful day. Work finishes. She goes off and takes 10 minutes and listens to a podcast. I don't know what she listens to, but it's inspiring stuff that works. And all of a sudden, she's left the day behind. I have a CEO who finishes work. He'll actually go in, take his work clothes off, have a shower, symbolically wash the day away, and then go and put his home clothes on, his dad clothes, and go out and then talk to his family, leaving the day behind. Just little strategies that we can use. Because we all have, self-care is so important here. And we all have 6 tanks that we need. They'll never be all full. That's not the point. We just need to make sure that none of them are running low or empty. Because if one of those tanks run low or empty, they pull everything else down. Okay, so I'll give you an example. You love your job, be a physical Adonis and go to the gym 15 times a week. You could be psychologically and emotionally balanced. You could be spiritual and meditate on a rock for 3 hours a day, but your wife hates you. It's going to pull everything else down. So we need to get a balance in all those areas of our life. So I just want to very quickly talk about how we stress less and what that means, because we can have all the best ideas of how we're going to live our life and how we're going to set up those buckets and make sure they're full. But what happens when we're stressed? And it's about shifting your thinking. And it's actually about a question we need to ask about stressing less. And the question is, what's the easiest way to start changing the way you think? And it's about very first moment of the morning to change the way from when you wake up and you open your eyes, you set your thinking at that point because you want to start the day the way you want it to continue. Does that make sense? So I call this morning glory, because who wouldn't want to wake up with morning glory every morning of their life? Thank you of those who smiled when I said that. So how do you get morning glory? How do you get morning happiness? The first tip is get your mobile phone out of your bedroom. How many of us, and I'd say about 90% of us, use their mobile phone as their alarm clock? So in the morning, it goes off, they reach over, they pick up their phone, it's going off, they swipe, and all of a sudden, they turn the alarm off. So I might just check my emails. I've got 13,000 emails that have come through overnight. Don't do it. Straight away, you're in the office and you're stressed out of your brain. Or people just go, I might just check the news. What are you going to read about? How many people have died of COVID-19 all over the country? How it's all doom and gloom. Stay informed, absolutely, but don't fill your head with that stuff in the first 5-10 seconds that you're awake. Instead, how you start your day, and this is not my stuff, this is from the Dalai Lama. There are 3 ways to set your mind in the morning. The very first one is you wake up, and I do this every morning. I put my hand on my heart. This got me out of a very dark period of my life. You tell yourself as soon as you open your eyes, 7 days a week, I'm lucky to have woken up. I am alive. Because you are. You've just woken up. One day you will not wake up. And I see this every single day in my 92-year-old grandmother who wakes up in the morning, opens her eyes and says, sweet, another day on the planet. I'm lucky to have woken up. I'm alive. The second thing to tell yourself when you wake up is, I have a beautiful life. Because you do. Look, in the country where you live, we're so lucky. There's no bombs falling on your head. You probably have enough food in your cupboard to last you a month. I have a beautiful life. And if you think you don't have a beautiful life, there's something wrong and you need to do something about it, because you have a beautiful life. Even in the middle of a pandemic, you still have a beautiful life. And the third is, I am not going to waste this day. Because if you don't remind yourself that you are driving the bus of your life and you are in control and you're going to give this day the best crack you can and be aware of it, then you will waste the day and everything will start to roll into each other. If you don't stop and make sure you're not wasting the day, it'll just roll on and become like a hamster on a wheel. I sometimes laugh when I hear people say things like, can you believe it's November already? And I'm like, of course I fucking can. You had January, February, March, April, May, June. Don't wish your life away. And you actually have to do it. You have to not waste this day every day. And the last key trick that I'll tell you that none of you will do, but I seriously tell you to, is have a cold shower every morning. Freezing cold. Jump in, you hop in, you're cold, you scream. My kids think I'm insane. Like, Dad's in the shower again, nude, screaming his head off. You jump in. It's so many physiological benefits, I can't tell you. You're screaming, your mind's clear, your testicles all shrink up. For men, I'm not sure what happens for women. You're in there and you jump out and you're alive. You've set your mind in the morning, just like the Dalai Lama told you. You've had your cold shower and then you're ready to start the day with a very fresh mind. So lastly, I just want to talk about joy. And, I've been talking about joy for a couple of years. This isn't soft, bell ringing stuff. This is actually from the Harvard Business Review recently. They're looking at making joy a priority at work. So this is something we need to do in our workplaces. And now, especially when we're working remotely or in social isolation, it's vitally important. And it's about perspective. And it's how do we schedule that joy back into our life? So that perspective of making sure that we're not sweating the small stuff, that we're actually putting into our phones, that we want to be happy, we want the simple things like talking to our friends, put it in there so that if you all of a sudden have it set in your phone, so you're actually catching up with people who are doing the things that you love, and it may be by some sort of social media platform, it may be on Zoom, but make sure you do it, because that's what helps us stay alive. So I'll finish off really quickly now, because I've probably gone way over time and Shelly's going to be so angry at me, but I could talk about this stuff all day. I want you all to ask yourself a final question, and it is, what brought you true joy as a 7-year-old? What brought you to true joy as a 7-year-old? And when I ask this question, people say stuff like riding my BMX, climbing trees, playing with Lego, Barbie dolls. Just for me, it's simple things like, nerdy things like putting my whites on for cricket, or body surfing a wave, or fireworks. It's simple things like that. So what happens is we lose that true joy that we had as life piles all that shit on top of us over the years until we lose those simple things. So just have a reflection on that, about what brought you joy as a 7-year-old. So we'll just flick through these last couple of slides really quickly, because what we do now is after a webinar, we provide all this immediate action, because it's one thing to talk about this stuff, but how do we do it? What's the practical stuff? So for webinar participants, I then say, you can get started right now. It's in your inbox. So they click on, they've got a straight link to a Wellbeing portal to find that joy. They also have videos they can watch, online videos, Wellbeing check-ins, all kinds of things that they can watch and learn from, and they can tap into. And I just want to finish just by talking about joy, and it's my very favorite quote in the world, and it's something we should all remember and try and live our lives by. And it's that life can be hard. Laughing is how we come to terms with all the ups and downs and cruelties and uncertainties that we face. Because in a time of COVID-19, we need to keep laughing, we need to keep connecting, we need to keep caring about each other. And there's never been a more important time to do that. So thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, sticking with us. Back to you, Shelly, MC of the Year.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Look, I can't be mad at you for going over because you brought me a lot of joy then by discussing morning glory and cold showers. So we don't have time for any questions, unfortunately. We'll have to just get you back for another session. Now, before I introduce our next speaker, I'm going to quickly pass over to Keith Harwood of Inspired Speakers. He's going to share a couple of solutions he's been developing to help us with the new way of working. So, over to you, Keith.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in this morning. I really hope you've enjoyed the event so far, and can I just quickly say a big thanks to our host this morning, Shelly. We've worked alongside Shelly for a good few years now, and she's a great MC for live conferences and events. But with her years of broadcasting experience, she's a perfect option to consider for virtual conferences and events that you might be planning. Her ability to come through the camera into your home or office is an ability few can do as well as her. And it's certainly a skill I won't be able to demonstrate in the next 2 minutes. As Shelly mentioned earlier, the way we all work has drastically changed in recent weeks. COVID-19 is like a test any of us have experienced so far in our working lives. And if you're in the business of bringing people together in any form, your role in achieving that, bringing people together, is as important than ever right now. People are in isolation and they need to be connected. So that's what we've tried to do here this morning, a little bit of what's possible and show you what's possible with AV1 and also with our talent, wherever they might be based. We've got Shelly, Craig, and in the studio, and we've got Aaron who's just been in Noosa, and also Kristen who's coming to us very shortly from Michigan in the US. We want to show you that no distance and travel can actually work to our advantage when engaging top speakers for virtual events. The other thing that we wanted to show you is virtual leaders. We recently created virtual leaders, which you can see at virtualleaders.com.au. And we created it to specifically answer the problems that everyone is facing in their new work environments right now. You'll see in the website we have 9 different virtual event programs that give you and your teams the skills and mindset to thrive in a virtual business world. We have programs on how to be a virtual sales expert. Aaron's program is on there called The Marvelous Mindset, Mental Wellbeing in a Virtual World. There's programs on productivity, cash flow for small business owners, resilience, remote leadership, and you'll see Shelly's program on how to make virtual meetings work. All live and all tailored for your audience. Now, I don't think I can fit the word virtual anymore into this conversation, but if you think of any of these programs can be valuable for your business or your clients, please give me a call. You'll see my number on the page. Okay, that's all for me. My big thanks to Shelly, Aaron, Julie, Craig, and Kristen, and of course, Keith, Dave, and Molly, and the entire AV1 team for helping us turn this around so quickly. And thank you for tuning in. We have another very exciting showcase in a few weeks' time, so please look out for that. Thanks, Shelly.
Thank you so much for that, Keith. And yes, I agree. This session on how to make virtual meetings work, it seems particularly interesting. Guys, if you missed that website, make sure you check it out, virtualspeakers.com.au, or go to inspirespeakers.com.au and contact Keith directly. So, how are you doing? Do you reckon we just push through? I think we do. Let's keep this show moving. Our third speaker is Craig Foster. Craig is a former player and captain of the Socceroos. Following his retirement from the field, Craig has won multiple Logies during his broadcast career with SBS. However, Craig is perhaps equally as well known for his work beyond the field or screen through the social programs he's developed, as well as his advocacy for sport and human rights. Craig recently spearheaded a campaign to free a young player from Bangkok remand prison, Hakim Al-Harabi, creating a global movement and leading a coalition of sporting and human rights organisations. And now here to share some of his experiences around people power, please welcome Craig Foster.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you everyone for your time. It's lovely to be here. It's nice to be asked at a time when we're all faced with so many challenges, aren't we? And I think many of us are searching for answers to really fundamental questions about where we are, who we are, what we've been doing in life, what society is about, and what the next 10, 20 or 30 years of our lives really look like. Certainly I am. And this has been, through this challenge, I think it's been a moment for many of us to just pause also and take some time with our families or socially connect with people that we haven't talked to for many, many years and just reflect on who we are and what it is that we want out of life. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, this concept of what you're capable of, or what we're all capable of, actually, and share with you some experiences in recent years that has given me an insight into the capability of all of us that extends well beyond what so many people see or think they're capable of day to day. And guess what? That means that you're it. And when things happen in life, and there's opportunities for you to step up and do something special, do something different, confront a challenge that you haven't done so before, step outside of what we know as the comfort zone or your frame of reference, your context, whether that's within your organisation or without, whether that's in your family or within your friends or within your social circle. When those moments come, the question for us all is, can we really challenge ourselves to do something a little bit different, something a little bit special? Well, I'm here to tell you that you can. Why? Is because through some of the events and campaigns and experiences I've had in the last few years, one of the things that I've learned is that people are capable of incredible things. I've seen people in my life, long-term colleagues, friends, family, people who I didn't know and came to work with, came together to share this inspiration and experiences through several campaigns that we'll talk about shortly. I've seen them grow, I've seen them be inspired, and I've seen them change in front of my eyes and become more of what they dreamt to be, to do things that they never dreamt or they never thought or others didn't think that they were capable of doing. So when these moments come, I just wonder whether you're going to be able to say that you're it. Don't look around for someone else to take responsibility. Don't look around for someone else to do what's difficult, to do what's hard, but to do what's special. You can take that responsibility in your life. I had a few of those moments, and one of the quotes that I particularly like around this is here. And it's extremely challenging to us all. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is, in fact, that we're powerful beyond measure. Your playing small does not serve the world. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And those first two lines, to me, are really important. Sometimes I reflect on them and look back at the last couple of years in particular, after a football career, professional career, playing for Australia and doing all those things and having a marvellous time and still doing so in the broadcast world. But some really key moments came to me and I had to step far outside the context of what I had done before. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And that's really challenging to us because as we look backwards at what we've achieved in our life, and I often do, we have to accept the decisions that we made. And what we have today is all of the decisions is the net of all of the decisions that we've made up to now. And looking forward, it's actually really challenging to think that we could create much more, that we might be capable of incredible things. And I'm here to tell you actually that from what I've seen, you are. So let's just talk about a couple of key themes. Talk about doing what you love, stepping up when it matters, following your purpose. We talk about that a lot. It's very unique to every individual. Some people, some of the best people that I know are working in the charity, NGO, human rights space, doing incredible work. And society, I think, like the health workers now, people packing shelves, people driving trucks, all of these careers that haven't really been respected. That's certainly one. For those people, they're following their purpose. They love what they're doing. They're passionate about helping people every day, as am I. And I wish for you, for all of us, that we can find that. And people working together, this concept of people power. I know it's true. I know that it works. Why? Because I've felt it. I've been part of it in a pretty extraordinary way in recent years. So let's go back and share a couple of these experiences, and I'll reflect on what I took out of them. This moment here was pretty crazy, really, when you consider that guy in the middle. His name was Hakeem, and 77 days or so prior to this photo, when he's taking a selfie in the Prime Minister's office, he was detained in Bangkok in a Thai prison, as some of you may know, and he was facing further torture and quite possibly death if he was repatriated back to his former country. In 77 days, that kid went from incredible, terrifying fear to standing in the Australian Parliament in Canberra and meeting the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Marise Payne. That's what people are capable of. It's an incredible story of people coming together and everyone who was involved in that campaign stepping outside what they'd done prior to. Even those involved in campaigns prior had to do something different, had to do something more, and had to take a leap of faith. Certainly I did. And when I look back at it, I think of this moment. When people first came to me and said, "Have you heard about this kid who's in Thailand?" I said, "No. I haven't, what's it all about?" They said, "Well, this kid's been detained and, previously he's been tortured and all these things." And as I started to look into the issues that he was facing, the first response for many of us, I think, is, well, I have my life here and it's wonderful, I'm enjoying it, but someone's going to have to go and help this kid. Someone is going to have to go and take risk. Someone is going to have to face this challenge. Someone is going to have to put themselves out publicly and try to make a difference, which carries, a range of risks, whether that's personal, family, reputational, professional. But the point is, I looked around, as so many of us do each day, and thought, well, who's going to go and help this kid? Who's going to save him? And then I realised at some point that actually it was me. That I had the skills, I had the tools, I had the experience, I had the passion, I had the frame of reference and the context of what he was in. I knew football as well as anyone. I had the media skills and a range of tools that put me in a position where I knew I could help him. But it's still a big leap of faith to go and do that. And it was in that moment that I had to decide how much I would put forward for Hakeem, a kid that I didn't know. And I decided to go to Bangkok. That decision changed the destiny of this young man, changed the destiny of his young family. It changed my destiny. It allowed me to do many things hence, which I couldn't have otherwise done if I hadn't taken that leap. And I'm no Superman. I'm just an ex-footballer who happens to work in the media and do some work in human rights and other things. And that's the point of me talking to you today. At this time when we all get to just look back a little bit and reflect where we are, it's these moments that I'd like you to perhaps think about, because we all have them in our life. Okay, it might not be of this magnitude, and I'm not saying that, we're all unique, we're all different, and we all have incredible capability and capacity. So my skills were available and were pertinent to what Hakeem needed that time. But there's other people who need you today. There's other people for whom your skills can make a huge difference. There's tens of millions, actually, of Hakeems in the world that you can help And that might be within your company, it might be within your social circle. It really doesn't matter. To me, it's just about helping one person every day. And if we all do that, then we can make the world genuinely a better place. But we all face these moments. And I remember sitting back at home in Sydney, and we had some personal risk. Some of you might have read the book that we wrote with Hakeem about it, to really capture some of that goodwill that had occurred through the campaign. And we had some security risks at home with people surveilling our house and so on. And I remember sitting and making that decision. You know, really, should I go, or can I make this happen? Can I bring this to life, and is it really worth the risk? Well, you know what? Clearly it was. And making that leap of faith has changed the way that I work today. Because when challenges come to me, or people now come every day and ask for help, ask for campaigns, ask for support, it's changed my way of working, it's changed my way of thinking, because I know that so much more is possible than what I was doing only a couple of years ago. It's extraordinary, really. I think it's the same for all of us, doesn't matter what the context is. I went to Bangkok and I found out that he was in deeper trouble than even I knew. And I had another one of those moments, actually, when I was it and no one else could do it. I realised that he wasn't getting the help from his own game, which was obligated to step up for him. And we got some intel in Bangkok at the time through diplomatic back channels and the like, that he was in really, really deep, imminent trouble of being extradited back to Bahrain, in fact. So I remember very well just sitting in a taxi and drafting this tweet to FIFA, the largest sporting organisation on the planet, for whom this doesn't happen too often. I'm not sure if it has at any time. And thinking, I need to go there and gate crash the biggest sporting body on the planet. And I need to force them into action. And to do that, I'm going to have to get the international media there. I'm going to have to make a press conference, and I'm pretty much going to have to threaten them that I would put them under some public pressure about what was going on behind the scenes. So I remember I drafted this in a taxi heading back from, I think it was the Australian Embassy, back to the hotel in Bangkok, and sat there just before sending it. It was another one of those moments where you have to really take that step, which can be a little bit uncomfortable at times. And I hit send. And the next morning I hopped on a plane and I arrived in Zurich. And within 48 hours we had a meeting with FIFA. We got them on board. We issued a joint press release. And we ultimately, within only a couple of weeks, we had Hakeem back in Australia. So 2 of those moments were really important. And I think from the outside, what I want to tell you is that it's easy to look and say, well, that guy must have a cape on and he's capable of going and doing all these things which I'm not capable of doing personally. But it's simply not true. Actually, many people in there within this campaign did extraordinary things. And without this collective team effort, it never would have come to fruition. There's another gentleman in that room, his name is Brendan Schwab. He's the head of the World Players Association, the Global Players Union. An extraordinary mind and values very much aligned with mine. And I took him into the meeting, another Australian. And it was interesting that one of the most important meetings in football, certainly in relation to human rights and football fulfilling its social responsibility, had 2 Australians in the room and Fatma Samura, the Secretary General, because we conducted that meeting in a way that I often say is almost uniquely Australian, and that is that we traded nothing. We went there to get that kid out with no self-interest, to put ourselves at risk, to trade all social and political capital that we had at that time, to make no trade of nothing in the future, except to get Hakeem Al-Arabi out. That was uncomfortable for a lot of parties, including our Global Players Union and FIFA and many, many others. But ultimately it was about just one purpose, doing the right thing for this kid. And when we took that purpose-driven approach, there was only going to be one outcome, because FIFA weren't going to get out of that room without Hakeem Al Arabi being freed. But this is about you, it's about what you're capable of. And I want you to just reflect, before the world goes back to the speed at which we are more familiar, just to take a few moments to think about some of those key times in your life. But it's also about you and us. It's about what we can do together. Because after this, we need to change many things. We need to change sport. We need to change human rights. And I would say we need to change Australia in many ways. But that's a bigger discussion for another day with more time. But every person here was part of a team. This wasn't about one person running off and doing something heroic. This was about the power of all of us together. And when we're aligned and inspired to a true purpose, there's nothing actually we can't achieve. And if we go back to that first quote, that's actually the scary part. Because when you realise that when great people get together and fight for the right things with the right values, whether that's Australia being better or the world, it's actually challenging to think that we can make that change, which means that we're obligated to do so. You might have seen this shot. Hakeem ultimately landed back in Melbourne Airport and went to see his wife. Some months later, here's this kid at the United Nations. And it all started there. It started with many of us saying we're capable of more than what we've done before. I'll say that again. We're capable of more than what we've done before. I had never done this before. I didn't, quite frankly, know I was capable of doing that, and neither did many of the people in the slide that I showed you. And that was, one of the great lessons of the campaign. I'd like you to just reflect, if you can, please, on the fact that Hakeem was a refugee, and this is an issue really close to my heart, that there are around over 70 million refugees and asylum seekers in the world today, an historic high, and that in actual fact, they have a right to seek asylum, and that when Australia stepped up and we went to help Hakeem and get him out in this extraordinary, inspiring campaign that all of you were part of, we also have to acknowledge that there are many other asylum seekers and refugees to whom we haven't applied the same values, we haven't treated them appropriately, and that all of these people who are displaced around the world, which is increasing, including due to climate, they all not only need, but they deserve our help. They're human beings, and every single one of them should have an opportunity at life that we've had. And we have a responsibility, a moral obligation as human beings to help others, not just to make our own best way. So after this campaign, I went across to Port Moresby and met a whole heap of the guys who have suffered terribly over the last 7 years. And that's been another inspirational experience that I've been able to participate in, to get to know these guys, but to see the trauma that they've experienced has been really horrific. Australia is better than this, and I'd like to appeal to all of you to make sure that you raise your voice when the opportunity comes. Australia should never treat people in this manner, and these guys are the same as Hakeem, and that's the point, isn't it? That every single one of them has human rights, as did Hakeem, and we all stepped forward and did something exceptional for one young refugee from Bahrain, but there are many, many more who also need our help. Finally, recently, when the pandemic hit, I also had the opportunity to bring sport to bear in a social campaign to step forward to support Australia through this period. And we've had wonderful professional and high-profile athletes, and we've got Ty Kennelly there, who's a fabulous guy, the assistant coach of the Swans, supporting us, and former Socceroos and rugby, and everyone coming forward to help Australia through this period. So that's also been very powerful. And it's been inspiring for me to see others increase their capabilities and do something that they're inspired by and that they hadn't otherwise done before. All of these people doing something that takes them a little bit further, that makes some change in their life. But in the end, all of these campaigns, whether it's Game Over for our refugees and asylum seekers, or whether it's Play for Lives, this movement for sport to step up and increase our social connectivity, play a role in Australia getting through this current pandemic, and doing something special for Australia that sport's not usually associated with, all of those were only possible because of that moment sitting back here in Sydney and thinking, looking around and saying, who's going to go help this kid? Who's going to do something for him? He needs someone to step forward and go. And that moment when I looked and said, well, I'm it. That's what I wish for you. Because life can change after that. And you are capable of doing incredible things. So guess what? You're it.
Oh, Craig, thank you so much. That was incredibly inspiring. Now, I do have only time for one question, and
Okay.
it's from Christy, and she wants to know, do you think your human rights work was a passion you've always had, or is it something that has developed?
I always had a passion to, help people that I could see were in need. So even when I was playing, I was involved in a whole range of social programs, particularly Indigenous children, right to play, education and so on. But of course, as you age, become more educated. And particularly when I was doing my law degree a few years ago and studying human rights, I started to then kind of extrapolate that out from a feeling that as a high-profile and international athlete for a particular country, happening to be Australia, that we have an obligation to help others who don't have what we've been given. From that to, of course, the broader perspective then becomes human rights in sport on the global scale, which I think is really important. We have an opportunity to change the world actually through sport. If sport upholds, all of the universal human rights and accepts its social obligation, then the world can genuinely be changed and can become a much better place. So that's one of my passions now. And that's just, I think, along the lines of, what I was talking about there is just continuing to just want to evolve all the time and try to do make the greatest contribution that I possibly can. And being inspired through these campaigns has really changed my life. And I keep saying to people, that's what I wish for you. I wish for you that every day you can go and do something that you're incredibly passionate about, that you're helping people, whether that's in your company, through your company, outside your company, in your community, social circle, whatever it is. But I wish for you that you can feel what we felt during some of these campaigns or playing for Australia every day.
Thank you so much, Craig. And you know what? It's very inspiring, and I feel like we just need to be brave enough to say, I'm it.
That's it.
Thank you so much for your time. Well, now it is time for our fourth and final speaker, Kristen Hadeed. Now, Kristen imagines a world in which all organisations have cultures that empower people to climb towards the very best version of themselves. She is the CEO and founder of Student Made, a cleaning company that has employed millennials, thousands of them, and is known for building the next generation of leaders. Through this, she has fostered a unique perspective on leadership, and she looks at organisational cultures and also bridging the generational gap. In addition to leading her own company, Kristen now helps other organisations around the world make a lasting and permanent change by encouraging people to thrive. Today, she will be talking to us about redefining success, all the way from Michigan, USA, where she has just finished running a course for Simon Sinek. Please welcome Kristen Hadeed.
Hi, thank you, Shelly. Well, I will begin by saying I started my company 13 years ago when I was 19. And as someone who had no business experience, no leadership experience, this really being my first job, I had a lot to learn and it was very challenging. I had moments where I thought the company would never be able to recover. And I'm in a very challenging industry, the cleaning industry. We have people cleaning toilets. So you can imagine there's just so much that goes into how do you create a culture where people really want to be when the job that they're doing is cleaning toilets. So I've had to learn a lot, and a lot of it's been the hard way. And I will say that in the last 13 years, I have never been through a time that is more challenging than the time that we're in right now. I think that where we are right now, I would describe this as the greatest test of leadership, of culture, of business. And so I sit here before you, I don't have the answers. But I thought I would share some things that I'm thinking about as I'm learning to lead myself through this time, and in my case, lead a company and a team through this time. And the three things that I really want to talk to you about are fear, resilience, and redefining success. So let's talk about fear. Fear can be a good thing, and it can also be a really bad thing. Fear is a good thing in that it makes us feel alive. It reminds us that we're human. It reminds us that we are present and feeling the reality of what is right now. And so if we pretend that we don't have those feelings, or we feel shame about having those feelings, it's not healthy. So I've learned to be thankful for fear because it reminds me that I'm human and that I'm alive. And I know, like many of you who are watching, in addition to leading my company, I also, my real passion is speaking and teaching. And in any given year, I'm doing 75 to 100 sessions a year. And just like this, the whole world changed. And there was a lot of fear, not just about how to lead my cleaning company, Student Made, through this, but also what happens to my speaking and teaching business and all of the people that both of these businesses employ. And so feelings of, what does the next chapter hold, and uncertainty and frustration, and all these feelings are normal and they're human. So remember, it's good when you feel these things because it lets you know that you're alive. But fear is bad when it prevents us from moving forward, and it prevents us from making progress, and therefore prevents us from having the success that we all really want and hope to have. So I have 4 things. I'm just going to run through these really quickly to help you with fear. The first is acknowledge it. Create the space, acknowledge it, say it out loud, learn to look at it with gratitude that you're alive and you're human and you're present. The second, I don't know who said this. I wish I did so I could credit them. A mentor of mine said this so long ago, but it's always stuck with me. Fear equals false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. When we're afraid, our mind automatically goes to worst case scenario. And we must remind ourselves when we're afraid that our mind is doing that. It's not reality. We have no way to predict exactly what's going to happen. We have no way to know how the future will pan out. But our mind goes to worst case. And so we just have to remind ourselves that, hey, this is one potential scenario, but there's also a lot of others. False evidence appearing real. The third I call what would happen if. What would happen if that worst case scenario actually came true? Can we make a plan for that? Can we wrap our heads around that? Because sometimes when we acknowledge what a worst case might be and have a plan for it, it minimizes our fear so that we can move forward because we already have a plan for worst case. And if you think about it, how often does worst case actually happen? Not often. Sometimes it does happen, but many times it does not. The fourth step is move forward. Have the courage to move forward. And what I always tell people is you don't want to live in what if land. You don't want to live in what if I had, what if I hadn't. And many people get to the end of their life and they think about their life and they reflect on all the decisions that they made and all the opportunities that they didn't go after, all the risks they didn't take because they were afraid, and what that fear cost them. And so how can you have the courage to move forward, even if you don't have the answer, even if it might not work, even if it might fail, so that you're not living in what if I had, what if I hadn't. So that's fear. The second is resilience. Resilience is always an important skill, but right now it's so important because resilience is the skill that helps us get back up again. It reminds us that I know this time is really hard and it's really challenging, but there are better days ahead. And if we can get up, we're going to look back one day, not today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, but there's going to be a day where we look back and we realize that there was a gift in this moment, that there was an opportunity. When I first started my company, I think I was 21, so this was 2 years into having my company. I got a contract to clean 800 empty apartments. And I was clueless when it came to leadership in business. And I hired a team of 60 people to help me clean these 800 apartments. And on the third day, 45 of those 60 people just completely walked out. They quit at the same time, walked out. And at 21 years old, to have 45 people just walk out on you, I mean, I can't even articulate how that moment felt. It was absolutely horrible. It was devastating. But when I reflect on it, I realize that that was the moment that my whole life changed and the trajectory of my life changed. And I would not take it back for anything. I would never rewrite that part of the story, because when those 45 people walked out on me, that's what inspired me to want to really learn about leadership and how to become a better leader and how to build a place where people really wanted to be, even though the kind of work that we were doing wasn't fun work. And had it not been for that really horrible moment, I don't know if I would have chosen to stick with my company. When I graduated, I was offered a job in finance, working on Wall Street with a 6-figure salary, and I chose to give that up to stay with my cleaning company, even though it wasn't making any money, because those 45 people walked out on me. And it really inspired my obsession with learning how to make this company work. So I think if we reflect back on our lives and we think about all of the hard and challenging moments that felt impossible, and right now, it maybe in our lifetime we don't have a moment to compare in terms of what we're actually experiencing right now, but we have moments where we have felt afraid and uncertain and like the world is falling apart and the world is crashing down and we don't know what the next chapter holds and we don't know if we'll recover. Those are feelings we've had before. So can we learn to look back on those moments and really think on what was the gift? What was the opportunity? What did we learn from it? Because it is possible to be going through something really hard and really overwhelming and really devastating, while also having opportunities and being able to look back and be grateful that that thing happened. How is it that something so sad, people are losing their lives right now? There's nothing sadder and more devastating than that. But yet we're also seeing the best parts of the human spirit and of humanity. It is possible to have devastation and to also be able to look for the gifts. One thing is we're being reminded right now of what really matters. So how can we learn to look for the gifts? So fear, resilience, the last redefining success. The world that existed in January is not the world right now. And if you're like me, you set all these goals and all these plans in the new year and you were ready to go. And for me, I was ahead. For the first time in 13 years, like my team, we were on fire. We were going, we had it. And then this whole pandemic happened. Just like that, everything is turned upside down. And now all the goals that we had don't really make sense. And at first it felt like a failure. It felt like, well, the things we set out to do this year, we're not gonna be able to do. So we failed. But it's not a failure. The problems that exist are new problems. There are new challenges to solve, and there's new ways to help solve those challenges, and there's new ways to serve. I have a friend who is a realtor, and right now she's not able to show homes. And she's feeling very defeated because at the beginning of the year, she had this goal to sell however many homes, and now she's not able to do her job. And so feeling defeated, she asked herself, what can I do? And she decided to bake blueberry muffins for her clients. And she made these muffins. She delivers them to her clients' doorsteps. She left a little note. And all of a sudden, her clients start calling her and they're saying, oh my goodness, thank you for the muffins. She said people were crying about these muffins and she had no intention of these muffins being a big deal. But it meant the world to people because it meant that someone thought of them and cared of them and cared enough to bake a muffin and drive it to their home. And so it dawned on her that, okay, there's a lot out of my control, but what's in my control, I can show people that I care about them. I can help people feel like they matter. And that's something I can control every day. And right now she might not be selling homes, but in the future when those clients are asked by a friend, do you know a realtor that I could use? Absolutely, without question, they will recommend her. So we have to redefine success. We have to press the reset button. We need to be asking ourselves questions like, what are the new problems that exist? How can I help solve those problems? How can I contribute? How can I serve? How can I be more compassionate and kind? And how can I be a bright spot in people's lives? You know, like my friend is doing with her blueberry muffins. These are things that are in our control. And maybe it doesn't make sense to think about the next year or the next 2 years because we don't know. Planning is guessing. It's just a guess. The question that I'm asking, and maybe you're asking yourself too, is when will this be over? What will the next chapter hold? You know, when will that be here? We don't know. We don't have the answers to these questions. So instead, what's in your control? Could you ask yourself how you can make a difference today, tomorrow? Could you think in 1 month, 2-month chunks? You know, for me, the way I'm defining success right now is very simple. It's just one thing, to take care of my people. I want to be able to look back on this time and to be able to say that we didn't lay a single person off. We didn't have to lower anyone's salary. We loved our people and took care of them every single step of the way. And if we can do that, we can say, check, we did that. That's huge success. So you get to author your story. You get to decide how you define success. You get to decide how you give your gifts and talents right now. You get to decide waking up every day and being a bright spot for someone else. And so I'll close with this question. How will you define success? How will you define success? We're in this together. We got this. That's all I got for you.
Oh, Kristen, that was just fantastic. And I want to give you a blueberry muffin just for being part of this. We have a couple of questions. Are you ready to stick around just for 2 questions?
I'm ready.
Okay, we've got this from Alex, and it says, is it okay for leaders to show that they are vulnerable in a crisis like COVID-19, or do you always have to be strong?
It is critical, and vulnerability is strength. To be able to say, I feel uncertain and afraid, and also I feel optimistic about the future and excited about our opportunities. We need both. We need the reality, and we also need the optimism. And so I think we have to redefine what success is in leadership, and it is having the courage to be vulnerable.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you get this question all the time, but Jerry has written in and said, what's it like working with Simon Sinek? Everyone's fangirling.
He's pretty cool. So I met Simon in 2010. I had just graduated college, and he was speaking in my community, and my business won this entrepreneurship award. And so as a part of winning that, I got to go to a dinner with him. And this was before his message really made its way around the world. And so we just connected on the culture of Student Made. He was working on his book, Leaders Eat Last. He asked if he could interview me for his book. And that's just how we connected. And we've been working together ever since.
See, it takes one blueberry muffin or one dinner party and it can change your life. Kristen, thank you so much for your time. We are so excited that you could join us all the way from the USA, and we appreciate you. So quick, virtual hug.
Okay, yes, to say, let's end with a virtual hug. All right.
Yeah, I love it, virtual hug. Thank you so much. Well, everyone watching at home, there we are. We hope that you've had an awesome time this morning. Now, if you're like me, you've probably taken loads of notes. However, if you'd like to know any bit more about the people that have been speaking today, please contact Keith at Inspire Speakers. And if you'd like to find out more about Control Room, contact the AV1 team. As Keith mentioned, there's an exciting new showcase event happening in just a few weeks' time, so please keep an eye out for that. And one last thing, once this finishes, a short survey will pop up on your screen, and we would love it if you could take just a few seconds to let us know your thoughts on today's event. I'm Shelly Horton. I have loved being your MC. I hope you appreciated my freeze, because really it was just me auditioning to be part of the World Championships of Statues. I will see you soon, and everyone, virtual hugs.